Okay, so I had to always go in and change my settings. It says we're live, but hold on.
Let me turn on this other light.
All right. Let me look at one more thing and then we'll get started. Okay. Uh, I don't see any viewers on yet, but I want to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, people will come on in. I'm gonna share it. Hold on. It'll let me. And okay. So the first thing I want to do is share my screen because I want to recognize somebody. You know who this is?
That is I should know that. That's Tammy Terrell and Al Green, right?
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marvin Gaye and Tammy
So
Terrell.
yes, I wanted to share that because today is her day, April 29th, 1945. And I just remember her. My mom used to listen to them all the time. Used to listen to the duets, and so their duets are some of my favorite songs by him. Ain't no mountain high enough, you're all I need, and a
Hmm.
few others. But her story was interesting to me because it was really kind of tragic. You know,
Mm.
she died at 24, at the age of 24.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, she is from Philadelphia too. So I just wanted to kind of share that little tidbit of information. So if you get a chance, the unsung of her story is on YouTube, and it's really quite interesting because I did not know that she dated James Brown and the brother from the Temptations. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
David Ruffin, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a tragic story. So yeah.
Hmm.
Hey, greetings, Sister Mila. Peace and power. Oh, tell Skylar I said happy birthday. Um, I you know how I feel about Skylar. That's my girl. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm excited to have Brother Akil with me once again, and this conversation is sparked from another conversation I had seen. I'm like, okay, we got to have a real discussion about what's going on with the educational system because we got to really do something about it. Those of us who know that there's a problem, we got to be instrumental in working practically to do as much as we can to solve these problems. So I'm gonna let Brother Akil introduce himself to the audience. Most of y'all already know who he is, but it's more that he probably can add to his bio now. So Brother Akil, go ahead and tell us what's going on with
Yeah, so my name, for those that don't know, my name is Akil Parker. I'm a math teacher, math professor, math tutor, and just a brother that, believes that one of the ways for us to improve our condition as Black people is through a serious and deep understanding of mathematics. From an early age, early and often, we want all of our children to understand math. I want and have a proficiency and a confidence in math, and also adults too, because it's never too late. I think a lot of us we kind of due to the way formal education systems in America are structured, we think that once we get to a certain age, it's kind of like too late for us, you know. But it's never too late. It's never too late for you to, learn those math skills and develop the math skills that you didn't learn when you were 5 or 10 or 15 or 18 years old. I have a company called All This Math, and through All This Math, I'm using that as a vehicle to try to vastly improve the relationship between mathematics and the Black community, so that we can use math as a tool of liberation, and we can also, start to run toward math and not just away from it. And when I say math as a tool of liberation, what I mean is like a different and deeper definition of mathematics, which is a system for, problem solving ability, for us to be able to identify problems accurately and effectively, and also to map out a strategy and a method to solve these problems, so we can get out of the mess that we're in, as Jacob Carruthers used to say often. And that's what I do. So I write books. I wrote my first book last year called How to Use All This Math Volume 1, which is a guidebook for parents and grandparents, uncles, aunts, whoever, community members, showing them how to use everyday activities that they're already doing and that children are already doing in order to teach their children, use those activities to teach their children arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and prepare them for the classroom. Prepare them to walk into the classroom confidently and ready to learn the math that they're being presented with, from their teachers and from their schools. We also have a YouTube channel, which I want everybody to subscribe to and also to use on a daily basis, because I guarantee you, if you use that YouTube channel on a regular basis, you will be, confident and proficient at mathematics. You will. And also the videos in the channel are usually, for the most part, infused with some Black history. So you're gonna learn some Black history, you're gonna learn some math, you're gonna gain some math confidence, and you're gonna feel like you can learn it, from watching me, based on my teaching style. And beyond that, I mean, we do private tutoring, we do private virtual tutoring. Or currently, it's myself and my oldest son Nasim. Shout out to him. But we're going to be expanding and building out a team of math tutors, within sometime this year, I would think. And yeah, we're doing a lot of things. We're trying to serve our people, and we're trying to, even offer like parent workshops, so parents can, you know, begin to feel more comfortable with the math, so that they can help their own children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews, little cousins, godchildren, with the math homework. That's what we want to do, because I'm trying to remove math as a barrier to our progress, because math is a barrier to progress for a lot of our people, and I'm trying to make that not be an issue anymore. So, I know a lot of math, and I've had a lot of good teachers, and a lot
Yeah.
of people have taught me a lot of math over the years, and I'm trying to pay it forward, and pass it on to the community, and give the community the same benefits that my children have, because I grew
Mhm.
up with a father that's a math teacher and a math professor. My children have benefited significantly from that, from being given head starts, because of my background, my professional background, and I'm sharing that with the community, so we can all benefit and eat off of that. So that's in a nutshell, who I am overall. But yeah, just a brother that just wants our people to win, and my lane for doing that is helping us to understand math better and become more confident in math. So, math doesn't have to be that bully that we run from, but math can be the person that we call when we're getting bullied. You know?
Right. 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 And you said something, because one of my main points that I want to go over today is something I heard you say. I don't know what podcast I heard you say it on, but it really stuck with me when when they were talking about problems and things going on, and you asked the question, and I know it's an Amos Wilson grounded question, who benefits from our, I'm going to say, dysfunction? Who benefits from our miseducation? Who benefits from our drama? All these things, when it comes to us as a people, particularly. education. I say miseducation because
Mhm.
we are very much miseducated, and I'm learning. As I learn, I find out just how much every day. So can you talk about that a little bit, the politicalness of our miseducation and who benefits from it?
Yeah, and also like if I could before I go into that, I want to I guess give a shout out to the brother. He's still alive. He's a political prisoner. Not Mumia Abu Jamal. Shout out to Mumia who just turned 70. That brother, was a member of the Black Panther Party for self defense for many years. But
Right.
I also want to recognize Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown,
Hmm.
down in Louisiana, who ran with Kwame Ture, back in the 60s and 70s. And, while they were SNCC members and then temporarily, for a brief moment, members of the Black Panther Party for self defense. Because when you sent me the topic, I started thinking about this lecture that he gave that you can find on YouTube. It's called The Politics of Education
Okay.
in America. H. Rap Brown. This is like a lecture that he was giving, or a speech, also a speech. Him just talking to the people back in the 1960s. I want to say, and one of the things he questioned was, whose political end does it serve? So I
Hmm.
started thinking about, math deficiency. Whose political end does that serve? And a lot of people benefit from that. From
Hmm.
our math deficiency. So it's not just the issue of black children not being, smart enough, or black parents needing to do this or that to help their children to advance. Somebody is benefiting from that.
Right.
So I think we definitely have to examine who's benefiting from that, because if we're going to be math deficient, on the one hand, there's just the job aspect, right? And if we think about another member of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the late Bob Moses, who spent a lot of time in Mississippi,
Mississippi.
taught
Hmm.
math in Mississippi to young people, um, and had a lot of did a lot of work down in the Jackson in the Jackson area, as a math teacher. One of the things he said, as the co-author of Radical Equations, him and Charles Cobb, another SNCC member, was that mathematics education is the civil rights issue of the 21st century, right?
Hmm.
Um, so, we think about that and him starting the program, the Algebra Project, and we got to really start to like, think about how, mathematics can, benefit us, and also how it stops, by not learning mathematics, it hinders our ability to, compete for certain jobs, compete for certain careers, compete for certain opportunities, right? That's just one aspect, right? Because you gotta eat, we need
Hmm.
shelter, we need resources, and there are a lot of opportunities in the STEM disciplines,
Right.
right? So with having a weak math background, you can't compete for those opportunities, or it's going to be very difficult to compete for those opportunities. That's one aspect. But then on a deeper level, as I mentioned, mathematics is, I believe, the single most equipped subject for developing critical thinking ability, problem solving ability, and analytical reasoning ability. So if you don't have those abilities, so if you get convinced that that subject is too hard, that subject is irrelevant, you're not intelligent enough to master that subject, then what you end up doing is you're essentially running away from the thing that can help you solve problems, help you learn how to solve problems. And problems, that skill is a transferable skill.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if you're in a math classroom and you're 15 years old in 10th grade, or in a geometry, more specifically a geometry classroom, and you're doing some word problems involving triangles and trapezoids and everything. The way you solve that problem, the way you got to read that problem, analyze that problem, understand that problem, and then look at the diagram, understand the picture what's going on within the picture, and then create an equation, write it out on paper, and then proceed to solve that equation, and then come up with a final answer or a solution. That is the same way that we have to approach problems in life. So when young people say things, and even adults, a lot of adults say things like, I'm never going to use this stuff. Why I got to learn this? Why I need this? I never use this. Well, that's by design, because as people, we're gonna have problems, and a lot of our problems are gonna be complex. They're gonna be challenging, and like the same way we felt in math class 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when we sat in front of those word problems that were hard, we experienced the same emotional feeling when we're adults. We got children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, we got girlfriends, wives, husbands, boyfriends, whatever. We got coworkers, we got supervisors, and we have problems with these people. We have problematic situations that involve other people, and we got to figure out, like, okay, how do I solve this problem, right? So what I say is, like, from being able to engage in and be successful at mathematics, it trains your brain to be able to encounter and handle any type of problem. You know, it's not always about the content of the problem; it's about the approach, right? And even sometimes it's about training yourself to be perseverant, because some people just fold in the face of problems. A lot of students in class, like when the problem is too hard, they just don't even want to try. And oftentimes, there are adults among us when they're confronted with a problem, is if it seems too hard, they just fold, they just give in, and they just say, "All right, whatever, y'all do whatever y'all want. Take my property, take my land, evict me, kick me out of the house, whatever you got to do, fire me. I won't put up no fight because this is too much work, right? It's
Right,
too hard,
right.
right?
Mm.
So so I just look at mathematics as a way to, like, train ourselves to just to be able to handle problems and become problem solvers, you
And
know.
and I want to say, because I was at a library workshop a couple weeks ago in the morning on, and the library director from Rose College, she was a black woman. She said, yeah, that she was talking to another librarian about a financial literacy workshop that they had held. She's like, yeah, because that skill set is what we needed. Some of that math I learned, I didn't even use it. And then when you said that, it made me think you probably did, because you're the director of Rose College Library, which is a private college, white college in Memphis, and you're a black woman. So you had to have some kind of critical thinking skills to get that far in this in the library field.
People just like saying anything. They
Yes.
just like that's just a popular thing to say. Like, I didn't use it. Like, I
Hmm.
always wonder, like, how do you know that you didn't use it? Because
Right.
when you really start to unpack that, when somebody say that, it's like, okay, it's almost like, how can you, like, anytime you're confronted with a situation and an experience and you have to figure something out, how do you actually know, and how do you actually take an inventory of every type of skill that you used to figure that thing out? Like, how do you, like, what do they call it, like, how do you disaggregate your process of figuring something out, whereas you can specifically pinpoint every single specific type of task that you actually did, or every type of thought that you actually use and applied to figure that thing out? Like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know? It's almost like when you cook something, right? You cook some food, like, I don't know, like something with a lot of ingredients in it.
Hmm.
Like, if you're just the person that's eating it, you're not the actual cook. Like, how do you know what's in there?
Right.
Like, you don't really know, like, and something, you never know, like, what you're actually using. But that's like a popular, that's part of the that's in the common parlance, because that's just part of the propaganda, which is all programmed like, math is irrelevant, it's too
Hmm.
hard, I'm never going to use it, I never did use it. So, and then, it just spreads, like, how, like, during the pandemic, COVID was spreading, everybody was getting COVID, like, right? So it just spreads because people, I heard this person say it, and then I heard that person say it, and then, and then the children hear their parents say it, and their grandparents and their uncles and aunts say it. And it's like one of them things we just say, and nobody takes the time to really think about that, like, really question it and challenge it. And I would also say this. I was talking to my homeboy about this. When we talk about what we don't use, let's say the person is correct that they didn't use something. We have to ask the question, like, well, why didn't you use it? We was talking about this. We was talking about the fact that sometimes people manufacture situations where they won't have to use something, right? So they'll say, okay, well, I might be, I have this problem in front of me, right? And I know I could use this method to solve it, but because I don't want to use that method, or I don't want to try that method because it's too difficult, or I don't feel confident in it, I'm gonna purposefully avoid it. And then, so technically, you could say that you didn't use the method, but then the question is, why didn't you use it? If you could have used it, but you made a conscious decision to not use it because you thought it was going to be too hard a lot of times. And I think people do that too. Like they'll like purposefully, deny and dismiss an approach to something because they think that it's too hard. So they say, "Oh, I'll never," and then they end up saying like, "Oh, I never had to use it." But it's like it's disingenuous because it gives the impression that there was no need for it, not that you made a conscious choice to avoid it. Because a lot of people do that, like they just avoid certain math, because they're like, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that." But I'm like, bro, this is how you do it. Like you can set up an equation, so write it down on paper, and you can figure this out. Nah, I don't want to do it that way. Oh, why not? Oh, I don't know how to do it that way. Okay, well now we getting somewhere. So you realize you do need it. You just don't know how to use it.
Right.
And think about all the things that people, all the things people practice all the time and they never end up using. But if it's a more popular thing, you know, then you'll never say, well, I didn't even need that. I didn't use that. I mean, think about like I don't know, an example that comes to mind, like police officers that they were a police officer for like 20 years, 30 years, never shot their gun in the line of duty, ever. But they're never going to say like, oh, I didn't need a gun. I didn't
Right.
need my gun because I never had to use it. Like nobody would ever say that. They would never say that. Or I didn't go to target practice because I'm never going to shoot my gun. Right.
Right.
I'm never going to actually shoot nobody. Right. But nobody would say that though. Right. Because it's like, no, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. But with
Right.
math, but it's a tricky type of logic that goes on with math because we have to be programmed to feel comfortable with not being math proficient. Because if we're comfortable with it, if they program us to be comfortable with it, then we'll just accept it. And then as a result, then we won't be able to benefit from, you know, from the math and from having the math skill set. Right. So they gotta like figure out ways to like program us to like make us feel comfortable and confident with, in our own ignorance. Make us feel confident in our own ignorance, make us feel comfortable in our own ignorance. And then it spreads intergenerationally too, you know. So yeah. But
You
again, it's,
know,
it's 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 these catchphrases that we use all the time. I'm never gonna use it. I never had to use it.
right.
Um, you know.
And it's funny because I just finished reading this book, The Deep, and it's what they would consider Afrofuturism. So it kind of blends our history and technology and the future. And one of the things the story came from was storytelling, griot. And when you said that, I was thinking about how we pass down the math deficiency when we should kind of flip it and
Hmm.
say, you know what, I wasn't good at math, but I learned how to do such and such because that's what I'm trying to do with Mackenzie. And as far as you helping me have the confidence to be able to teach her, and that's one thing that I appreciate about you is that you make it plain, you make it simple, and why I direct so many people to all this math because we gotta flip it. We gotta change the story,
Hmm.
change the narrative, change the folk tale and folklore that we are not good at math, and create our own narrative of like some of the stories that we have passed down through generations. We need to do the same with math.
Yeah, and I'm here for that. Like, I want us to, and that's why there's such an initiative that I have with teaching the parents. Because a lot of people want to focus on the children,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. I think there should be focus on the children, but it's a lot of adults. I mean, I think we need to educate the whole family. We got to educate the whole family because the teachers can't even, they shouldn't really be expected to do all of it. And like the way public school and charter schools, even private schools, the way they set up,
Yeah.
they're not equipped to really fully provide all the education that the children need. Like children need, like, all people need some individualized attention. You
Mm-hmm.
can't get that type of individualized attention at school. You
Right.
got to have tutoring, or you got to have like a parent, a loved one, somebody that cares about you to really sit you down and say, look, let me show you how to do this. So I want for like elders and like, old heads in the community to be able to like sit down with like any child and like, let me help you solve these equations. But there's some work that's got to be done. So this is why, like you mentioned, my YouTube channel. This is why I created the YouTube channel. So like the elders can be able to do that. They can look at the video content and say, okay, this is how you do it. Cool. So now I can help my grandchild. I can help my niece, my nephew. I can help my child, you know. And also to have the confidence to believe that you could do it. Because one thing that people might not know is that, I get a little bit uncomfortable with math sometimes, because I had some rough patches in the past when I was
Mm-hmm.
growing up. Um, but but I have confidence that, so if a student needs tutoring and they might send me some of their work and some of their current assignments that they need help with, if it's not something that I'm as well versed at, for a split second, I might feel uncomfortable, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people do. But the only difference is because, I've gotten so many correct answers over the years, and I've taught, I have the confidence level to believe that I can figure it out. So I might have to look at one of my own videos or if something I haven't seen in a while, or
Mm-hmm.
look at somebody else's YouTube channel, or because there's a lot of YouTube channels out there that focus on math. It's like,
Yeah.
they're a dime a dozen. But, and some of them are cool for me, but they're not cool for everybody. And what I
Right.
mean by that is, if I just need a refresher, then it's cool. Like, you don't really have to be a good teacher. You don't. I just need a refresher. And I don't need you to, I might not need you to make me feel, confident that I can learn it, because I don't need you to give me that. But for people that have consistently not had success in mathematics for years, they need like a coach, like somebody to, like, hype them up and make them feel like they can do it, you know. But everybody's channel is not like that. But I may not need that. So I can go to somebody's channel, or I can go, like, do a online search for, like, a website that talks about a topic, or even a book. I can go to some book and, like, look it up. But because I don't know everything in math. It's a whole lot. There's more math that I don't know than I do know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that, even with that, I still probably know more math than most people, right?
Right.
So that just puts into perspective how much math exists, right? So, but and then I do it every day. That's the other thing. I tell, like, students that I teach, like, if you want to learn math, you got to do math.
Right. You know what? Me and my youngest daughter used to have endless discussions about that. I said you have to practice it. You have to practice math. Well, how can you practice it if you don't? Da, da, da. So it was like a one of those continuum things that we used to have. Now she's seeing it, as a college student. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And you gotta have steps, and you gotta have, like, sound teaching, and you
Hmm.
gotta be able to you gotta have notes. That's
Yeah.
another thing, like, children need to learn, like, how to take notes in a math class. You gotta be able to map out the steps, like, what's step one, what's
So
step
do you
two,
have a
what's step three.
video that teaches that?
Note taking, not yet. Not yet. I
Okay.
need to create one of those. Like, but actually, I need to do, like, a whole, like, webinar series or something on, like, just note taking. And now it's even more critical and even more, like, necessary, because with this heavy reliance on iPads and laptops and Chromebooks and everything. Now a lot of children, they just, in school, whether in school or at home, they're doing all their work on a laptop, so they're not actually, like, ever having to pick up a pen or a pencil and, like, write work down and write problems down. They go straight
Yeah.
to, I'm just answering the question on this online program, so they
Mm.
miss that opportunity. So then when they come home and it's time to do homework, they don't have, like, written problems. They don't have problems written out, like something like this to use as a guide for their homework. They don't have nothing like that, because everything they
Yeah.
did was online.
It's online.
So that's something else too. So we gotta have, like, a renaissance and get back to some of these, like, pre-pandemic ways of knowing, and ways of note taking, and ways of academics, and just get back, to some things that were old school. But that's like, that's like the whole, like, European worldview, like, that everything is, all progress, or, like, based on chronology. The later something is, or more
Mhm.
recent something is, it's got to be superior, like, just
But
because.
at that same workshop I went to, I found it interesting because one of the presenters, she did a survey, and she said that they had three ways that the students could fill out the survey. They could do it online, they could do a paper survey, or they had a whiteboard up in the library to ask the question. And she said, surprisingly, more students preferred the paper. So do you think that's a college thing, or do you think, it's something that we need to look at and try to start, like you just said, Sankofa, go back and fetch it and things of that nature? I don't know. I'm
I
just
mean, I'm not sure why that is. I'm surprised that like more students wanted the paper.
hmm
But I'm glad. I'm glad
Yeah.
they wanted the paper.
hmm
You know, I'm happy about that because I think it's needed, because what happens, I think what people take for granted is that when you have to write something down, you have to you're using your hand-eye coordination and you have to think about what you're writing.
hmm
So you're internalizing some information. It's like a form of studying. But when you type, it's not the same situation. I mean, somebody
Right.
might, it's like on a on a math is in a in a math program. Then what happens is you might just be typing in, variables and numbers and whatnot, but you're not going through the steps of the process. A lot of times, you're trying to like figure it out in your head. Figuring out in your head can be cool for some things,
Right.
but not for everything. I
Right.
think I think all the work should be written out step by step in a detailed fashion, so, you're reinforcing like how to do the problems. And then you can transfer the answer to the program online on your laptop or your tablet or even on your phone, even on your smartphone. But I think it should be written out and you should be able to see the work, because a lot of
Yeah.
students aren't doing that.
And because here in Mississippi, they had the assessment, third grade assessments. They had the ELA, English Language Arts, and then they had the math. I didn't even realize they had the math. But so Kenzie and I were working through the practice test, and that's her thing. She had her scratch paper. She was working out her problems, and and then that helped her see where she made her mistake. If her
Mhm.
answer wasn't there, she could go back and look at her steps and see where she did the wrong function, or put the wrong number down, or did subtract correctly, things of that nature. So I do think that's important, showing work. But I want to kind of go back to something you said about understanding math, and talk a little bit about financial literacy, because a lot of that's the cool thing to say now. And I saw this guy, he made a post about, we need to learn financial literacy skills, yada yada yada. And so I said, Brother Akil said, as a comment, I said, Brother Akil said that, the first step of financial literacy is understanding how to do math problems. You still have to have a basic foundation of math to understand how credit is, how you can use credit, how your all the interest and all these things are calculated and things of that nature. Because I think when we talk about financial literacy now, it's just you trying to get money.
Mhm.
It's not about creating wealth, and it's not about really understanding the fundamentals of how the money system works.
Yeah, well, you said it. It's not about really understanding, what's really taking place and what's really happening. Like financial literacy is, again, it's another buzz term, another buzzword, another buzz term. It sounds good. A lot of white folks that call themselves philanthropists, they throw money at programs. That you say especially if you say you're teaching poor black kids from the hood, financial literacy. I mean, I remember reading, what was it, Errol Ofari, The Myth of Black Capitalism. And one of the things he said, he was like, one of the things he wrote was that even talking about college education, this was one of his critiques of college education, was that, well, it wasn't really a critique, but what he was saying was, what that does is, one of the things it can do is it can create more people that will be making more money so that they can be exploited more because they have money to spend, right? And those are the things we gotta look out for. Because even if you talk about like financial literacy, another thing about that is we should really be talking about, if we care about the well being of our children, especially, we should be talking about economic literacy first, and we should be talking about, because a lot of things that you end up doing in financial literacy, it ends up being a way to protect yourself against exploitation if it's done properly. But then at some point, you should take a step back and say, well, why we got to do so much to protect ourselves? What are we protecting ourselves from? And then we
Mm,
actually talk about the system that we live in. We can talk about how capitalism is set up. Like it's an evil system where it's like it's not fair, you know. So then and then that exposes the contradiction because like you go to kindergarten or pre-K, you talk about sharing and being fair and being kind to people,
mm-hmm.
but that's not reality in Western society. Western
Right.
society is about capitalism. It's about dog eat dog. Like no, nobody wants to share. Everybody wants to be the person with the most resources and the most money, and maybe I'll give some crumbs to the rest of y'all. That's the reality. Like that's the real life. So I think the financial literacy conversation should be preceded by economic literacy, and it's not even about even promoting other alternatives. It's not even about promoting socialism or communism or anything like that. If we really just talk, we could just talk about capitalism. We can just have honest conversations about what capitalism is. It's like, and people they will get mad, but they shouldn't because it's like, okay, let's be honest with the children. Let's tell them what capitalism really is. Actually, I should say monopoly capitalism. It's not just capitalism. More specifically, it's monopoly capitalism. The purpose. So when people start talking about like it's a free market economy and everybody has a chance, like no, everybody don't have a chance. That's not
Right.
the goal. Is not for everybody to have
It's not set up that way.
a goal. It's called monopoly capitalism. For
Right.
get the monopoly, you want to get everything. And then when you have your goal is to be the Jeff Bezos, to be the Elon Musk, to be the Zuckerberg, to be those people, to be a lot of the guys who stay out of the media, whose name
Mm-hmm.
you never know, right? Who
Right.
may and often have more money or at least as much money as those guys that I named. That's the goal. The goal is to be them. And when we think about it, it's like, but it's got in order for that to happen, you gotta have billions of people that have very little or are starving. So that's a requirement. Like
Which
mathematics.
goes back to the whole politics of miseducation.
Hmm.
It's all like all intertwined, and that's why what I wanted to kind of bring out too was when you talk about financial literacy, you tend to forget about the politics involved with that catchphrase or
Hmm.
what that is, because you got people pimping that. I'm just people pimping it like when I do, you really do understand, because you got a budget and things of that nature. We got to start with the basics. So yeah, it all kind of goes back to that: who benefits from our dysfunction, who benefits from us riding these trends and these waves.
Yeah, and the math. One of the things about math is like math should teach you if you learn it properly, it should
Mm-hmm.
teach you to start asking the right questions. Because a lot of times, like it's not always about the answer; it's about asking the right questions. And a lot of us we don't ask the right questions. You know,
Right.
we don't know we don't know what to recognize, and we don't know like we don't recognize the contradictions. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like, well, I'm pre. We got pre-K students, kindergarten students, and you're talking about sharing and being kind and making sure everybody has the same amount. That's not reality in America.
Right.
Maybe that's how it should be, but that's not the reality in America. I mean, we can look at our own communities to see that, and I think the
Hmm.
children see it, the children recognize it, but we have to let them know, like, yeah, like what this is an ideal for things to be fair and equitable, but that's not the reality. Because look, these politicians, these white folks, they want to make sure that they're good. So they're going to take tax dollars and they're going to allocate it how they want to, right? They're going to make sure they're going to look out for home first, but they're really stealing because if we're all paying into the same system, and then because they have the political power and they're in a position to make the law or pass the laws that determine how the money gets allocated, then they're going to do that. You know, but we got it. Like the children got to know that. You know, um, and and back to the financial literacy. I often wonder what people mean. Like, what's their definition of financial literacy? Because
Hmm.
when they say stuff like we should schools should eliminate algebra 2 and replace it with financial literacy. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what financial literacy can you teach that doesn't require algebra 2? You need algebra. And I'm
Hmm.
saying that as a person that like I went to college for that. I got a whole finance degree, and all I did in all my finance classes was we was doing.
Man.
I
Hmm.
even I even had to take calculus. I took calculus for not the calculus that like STEM majors take, but my textbook was a little thinner but than theirs was. But we still had to take calculus, and it was all word problems, but it was all
Hmm.
business applications. So, or personal finance applications. So I'm like, what do you mean? But I think sometimes it's people again, people just saying stuff, and they don't. There's people just saying anything, and they don't know what they're talking about. It's like it's like, oh, we should get rid of this. Like, yeah, okay, that's a very surface level way of I'm not even gonna call it thinking. It's a surface level way of responding to a stimulus.
Right,
You know?
reacting. Everybody just want to get money, and that just sounds good when you want to get money. You don't want to
Yeah.
understand money.
Yeah. So I mean, if we want to do financial literacy, like I'm like, let's do it. I'm all for it. But if you're gonna do it, we gotta do it right. Like
Right,
you gotta talk about compound interest, which
right.
has exponential functions, which is algebra two and pre-calculus. I mean, it's not hard. It might sound hard to somebody that is not well versed in it, but it's a straightforward equation. You just gotta know, like, read the problem. Plug the numbers in the right places. What else? Calculating, your credit card payment, what it should be, the amount of credit card interest, average daily balances. Everything is a formula. Everything's a formula. Rule of 72 is
Mhm.
a formula. Saving, simple interest is a formula for that. There's formulas for everything. There's formulas
Everything.
to
Your
calculate.
water bill, your light bill, your gas
Yeah.
bill, all of it is formulas. And that kind of leads me to where I wanted to go to with the community education. It's like if we had these classes in our community, like then our children could go into math classes more confident.
Hmm.
If you haven't, just like with all this math, your examples that you have in the book, and you
Hmm.
start using these skills in everyday life, then when they go to math class, they're gonna like, oh, okay, this is just like, working out the compound interest that I'm, gonna receiving, or it's gonna be I'm paying $1,000 in interest this year on $500 that I, got on credit, things of that nature.
Right. And then it makes you, and so when you once you can do the math, then you can start to make some better decisions and some better choices, because you don't got to just rely on what somebody's telling you. 'Cause somebody might tell you, like, okay, this is fine, this is a good deal, but you can do some analysis. Like I said, like, math enables us to be able to do, like, analytical reasoning.
Hmm.
You can compare, like, okay, like, well, if I take this, like, if you want to buy a car, you might say, well, I could take this loan, at this interest rate from this bank, or I could take this loan at this interest rate from this bank, or I might have the cash for the car. I might want to just pay cash. But then if you pay cash, then you're like, okay, well, I could have just invested that cash in something else, and I'm gonna forego all the capital gains, and the return I would have made off that investment. So then you can, but at least you can make a conscious decision and an intelligent decision based on your options. Whereas a lot of us, we never know what our options really are, so we can't say what the best option is because we don't even know how to figure out what the options actually are. Oftentimes, we go into a store or a car dealership or whatever type of store it is.
Uh-oh, you lost your sound. We can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can y'all hear him? I don't know what happened. Hold on. It might be me. Hold on. You muted? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, a lot of times we're just at the mercy of, like, the salesperson, hoping that they're just going to tell us what to do, and tell us the right thing. But we really should be able to, like, do our own calculations, understand what the formula is we need to use, and then, like, use that formula. And then we can compare. But that's got to become like the norm. That requires a paradigm shift because we're so accustomed to just going into a store, somebody's going to tell us what we should do. So it's really an act of, like, asserting our own agency, and just to start thinking about what your options might be. But so knowing math you know, can help you to, be able to assert yourself better.
Yeah,
Math is one of those tools. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, because I've been thinking about what you said about community learning, and then our children, because for a lot of us, um, we don't have an option to public school. I mean, just
Right.
the reality of it. Everybody say, well, that's why we homeschool. But everybody in the collective of Black people don't have that option. And
Right.
so, but I am so huge and big. That's, I share academy on the community education concept, and then having our children, like you said, go to school to practice. I see it
Mhm.
a lot with my granddaughter, with her reading, and then even with math now. When she does something or learn something, she takes it to school and she's confident in her ability to do whatever. Over the summer last year, we worked hard with her on her multiplication facts. And when she
Ah,
went to school, she was already ready. She was the first member of the Gold Club who had mastered 1 through 12. And so, you can see the confidence level. You can see how they are just ready to
mhm.
absorb more when their confidence is up.
Yeah, the confidence is the key because a lot of times with math, you just have to believe that you can figure it out, and a lot of times we don't believe that we'll be able to figure it out because we buy into the propaganda. We think it's too hard, but the community learning is so important. Like you said, like I want us to get to a point, and it's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of hard work, but we
Mhm.
like reorient ourselves where the school that we don't control, because again, back to H. Rap Brown, Imam Jamil Alameen, anything that you don't control can be used as a weapon against you.
That's right.
So we don't control the schools, we don't control the formal compulsory education system. So it is being used as a weapon against us. That's why it's the title of this episode, the politics of miseducation, because we're being miseducated, rampantly. At least that's the goal of those that are in control. We can do certain things to protect ourselves against it. In the meantime, while we still have to send our children there.
Mhm.
But schools really should be that we don't control should be spaces for practice only. So that way, you're just practicing what your community showed you, and then the teacher that doesn't really may not necessarily have love for you, they become less relevant because it's like I don't really need you anyway. I, I'm just here, like I just want to practice what my mom taught me. What my dad taught me, what my uncle taught me, what my aunt taught me. I just want to practice. I'm just here for practice. I might have a little question here and there, but I don't need to. We don't have to be that close. So if you don't like me, it's cool. You don't gotta like me. I'm just I'm just here, to practice and develop my skills, develop my skill set. Um, and also, and then while they're learning in the community and in the household, we're having explicit conversations with the children about the purpose of education. Because
Right.
far too often, when school is the primary educator, school will condition you, sometimes explicitly, a lot of times implicitly, to believe that the purpose of your education is to just assimilate into the society and the end goal is to get the job where you can help to solve other people's problems. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
we gotta figure out how to solve our own problems because we got enough of our own problems. We don't really have time. Like we don't have time to like be solving other people's problems. We got enough of our own problems. Um, but if you take an individualistic route, where you just want the job with the money, with the house and the car and everything, then they pay well sometimes for you to solve their problems. But if you want to benefit the collective, we got to start figuring out ways to solve our own problems. So those are conversations about that being the end goal that we can have with our children, like in the household. So when they're thinking about doing math, and I think that's another reason why people think math is irrelevant because with the current political structure and the current infrastructure that we exist within, um higher level math really, because like I said, math is about problem solving, but we're not meant to those that are in control don't want us to solve our own problems. So then that is a reason for the math to become irrelevant because it's like, well, why would I want to solve my own problems? I don't need to solve my own problems. I just need to go get a job and solve other people's problems. So if math is the tool that I can use to solve my own problems, then why would I really be that invested into it? You know, I might learn just enough so I can help you solve your problem, or I can pass the test so I can qualify, for a certain job so I can solve your problems. But that's also a political issue. Like how we view ourselves as a people, and then if we start to view ourselves differently, then we'll start to think about education generally. Start to think about
and
education in a different way.
and that was Dr. Amos Wilson's study. When you said that, it reminded me of a quote Baba Baruti put up from Dr. Amos Wilson, who said that if you just studying to get a job, how you gonna solve your problems? And if in the awakening of the genius of Black children
Hmm.
by him, he talks about you look for students that can solve your skill set with a skill set that can solve your problems, right? The purpose of education is to for the survival of a people. And you look and you say, okay, this student is good in math, this student is good in science, and you use those and develop those skill sets to overcome your problems and not just get a job and things of that nature. So it's all political. If y'all want to read more about that, I recommend Dr. Amos Wilson. You can read his books, you can listen to his lectures. Very grounded in the politics of education as well as H. Rap Brown.
Yeah, yeah, and again, like you brought up community learning and community schooling, like that's where it's at. That's the key. That's the key. I think about, it's not that we need to compare ourselves to other groups, but I remember talking to an elder some years back, and she was talking about growing up in Philly, and she lived in a neighborhood with some white Jewish kids.
Mm-hmm.
She remembered that on Wednesdays they couldn't play outside because they would be going to Hebrew school, right? Because culture, even culture, like there's something else that H. Rap Brown said. Culture must be political, right? So them learning the Hebrew language, learning like the customs from their history and whatnot. Those are the things that have helped to sustain them, which is why
Mm-hmm.
those people have a certain amount of power, in the society, not just society, but all over the world. And I think we need to do more of that too, like right in the community, having formal educational spaces similar to the Ashe Academy. And we need to, kind of normalize that, because I know when some people, like at this point, if somebody learns about the Ashe Academy, a typical person would think that that's strange. Like, why would you have an independent school?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's strange. So like, but that's only because like we're not used to that. You know, we've been so used to outsourcing everything, and we don't covet our responsibilities. That's one thing I'm big on. I'm gonna start pushing that idea of again, it represents another paradigm shift, coveting our responsibilities, because
Mm-hmm.
must have been conditioned to think that if I get somebody else to do my work, it's like I don't know, like I remember sixth grade we read Tom Sawyer, and the whole like the famous scene from Tom Sawyer with the whitewashing the fence. He convinced the other little dumb white boys to whitewash the fence for him, so we wouldn't have to do it. Um, we gotta do the opposite. We gotta cover our responsibilities, and don't let when somebody comes to you and like try to take your responsibility. Like, let's take education. You always got these like benevolent liberal white folks that say, look, you don't got to start a school. Like, why they would say to you, like, why do you need an Ashe Academy? Look, we'll build a school. We'll build a school. We'll teach your kids for you. You don't worry about it. We got it. Just drop them off on time. Make sure they got their uniform on. Drop them off at 7:30. Pick them up at 3 o'clock. And actually, we got aftercare too, so you can pick them up around 5:30 after you get off.
Right.
It's cool. We're gonna do that for you because that's how nice we are. You know. So, so, so that again, so they're trying to take your responsibility, right? It's convenient. Some of us have to do it, but we got to think about it differently. Like, damn, like that's my responsibility. They're trying to take my responsibility. I got a responsibility to do certain things for my children and do certain things in my community. So we got to start to covet responsibilities, just like we got to, we covet our money, our resources, our clothes, our home, our cars. We got to look at responsibility the same way, because a lot of times you get taught that, okay, well, I can get somebody else to do this for me, like I'm getting over, like I'm winning. But then in the long run, what happens is a lot of things happen. You don't develop the skill set that you would have developed from having to do that thing. So then you don't know how to do it. And then you end up, grown man, grown woman lacking the skill because you never had to do it because somebody always did it for you.
Right.
And a lot of
Do
times
you?
people will do stuff for you and they try to make you feel like they're doing you a favor.
Mm-hmm.
but they know what the outcome's going to be. They know you're going to be limited in terms of your ability, and then you won't be able to ever compete with them.
Politics of education goes always goes back to that. So I know, when we were growing up, it was different. The community, they may not have been a quote educational space, but they were a caring space.
Mhm.
And so, people made sure that the children had what they needed. But my concern is uh the apathy, I guess, that people just don't care, and we
Yeah,
don't understand how the lack of one student will can and will probably affect the entire collective,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah. So how do you have any ideas on how we can overcome that?
Very aggressive propaganda.
Okay.
Very aggressive propaganda, because the apathy comes from very aggressive propaganda. A very aggressive propaganda meant to make people feel that that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Not that deep. This should not be a top priority. I don't need to worry about all that. You know, so I think we have to have a equally, actually not equally, an even stronger type of propaganda to push back on that. And it's got to be consistent, and it's got to
Mm,
be early, and it's got to be often, because we're up against a lot of brainwashing, a lot of conditioning that has been harmful for us, for a long time. Whether it's just conversations that are held in the community, or whether it's mainstream media, namely commercial rap music,
mm-hmm.
served as a blueprint for a lot of the nonsense that we do, myself included. When I reflect on a lot of, my behaviors of the
Yeah.
past, my thought processes, and why I thought certain things were cool and certain things made sense. And how when me and my friends, I'm in high school or middle school, and we listening to certain artists, and we never took the time. We never took the time to question if what they were saying actually was valid.
Right.
It made sense. It's one thing if we do that, go through that process, that analytical process, and then say, okay, no, that's cool. I can rock with that. That's cool. But you never even do that. Like a lot of us, we just into the music. We into the beat. It sounds good. It feels good. The way they say, it's not always what you say, but how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way they say it, like it sounds good, it flows, it rhymes, it feels cool to repeat it, right? And in the meantime, we're not thinking about the actual content. We're not even questioning it to say, okay, well, should I be repeating this, or should I be looking this way? Or does this even make sense? Or should I be promoting this or supporting this? And then some things, another thing, and this is like, a mathematical approach, right? Some things do make sense, you know, to a certain person, but taken out of that context, and if you try to apply it to your life, it may not make sense for you.
Mm-hmm.
It may make perfect sense for them, but it may not make sense for you. But these are all things we gotta, we gotta ask and we gotta think about. And it's an issue of critical thinking. It's an issue of media literacy,
Mm-hmm.
see also.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, and this is why, I promote math so much, because having a deeper understanding of math, from an early age, like I was good at math, but I didn't have as much of a deep conceptual understanding of math. Because I think if I did, I would have been more critical of some of the things I was exposed to, some of the things I digested, and listened to and heard. I would have been more critical of it. Um, but when you approach things through that type of lens, again, it's back to asking the right questions. That's kind of like like I raised my oldest son that way, and my daughter to Asada raised her that way. Like now we use the music that comes on the radio as like a teachable moment for like media literacy. And I ask questions like, why does that make sense? Why would you why should a man do that to a girl? Talk to a girl like that, or have that type of regard? Or why should a girl have that regard for a man? Like, why should a black woman have that regard for a black man? Why should a black man have that regard for a black woman?
Right.
Why should we spend our money on this or that? And like little different things. Like, people bragging because they paid, $2,000 for a pair of shoes. Like, why? Wait a minute, bro. Like, why are you paying so much? Like, but only with like, it's interesting how like in certain contexts, certain things make sense, right? But if you get overcharged for something, then somebody look at you like you was a sucker.
Amos Wilson said, if you want black people to buy it, all you got to do is tell them they can't afford it.
That too. Yeah, so it's like, but the
Hmm.
commercial rappers, they get paid to like promote this idea that like, yeah, like I should overpay. I
Yeah,
should overpay, right?
yeah,
I shouldn't try to, conserve my resources. I should overpay. I should pay too much, right? And then you can have a conversation about like, okay, the shoes are $2,000. I'm about $1,000 per shoe, right? The shoes cost maybe $150 to make.
right,
So you think about that markup. The markup is crazy, like, but it's a zero sum game. So the seller, they're making a huge profit, but then on the other side is the consumer, and we're losing.
right. Financial literacy right there.
Right. That's the real financial literacy, and then
Mhm.
like having those types of conversations and doing the algebra that's required, in that, and even like with financial literacy, I think about how many black businesses, it's like grand opening, grand closing because they weren't able to do the math that's required to do the forecasting, you know,
Yeah,
to do the, to, calculate what the profit margin was going to be or what it should
right.
be, or, because a lot of people might go into business because they may not have wanted to go to college, or maybe they wouldn't have qualified for scholarships, and maybe they weren't a strong student in high school. So they don't want to do any formal schooling, no formal education, right? And then, so they say, well, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. Not realizing that entrepreneurship does not mean that you don't have to do math. You probably have to do even more math.
Sure. Yes.
Entrepreneur, you want to
Hmm.
stay in business, So, somebody opens up a restaurant or something, and they're like, kind of trying to wing it. They're not considering, okay, well, if I'm selling, different platters and different types of soul food or whatever I'm selling, like, I got to consider, okay, well, how much does it cost for me to buy it up front? How much should I price my platters at? Because I need to hit the right price point. All of that is algebra. All of it is algebra. Like that, again, going back to my finance background, we took classes where there was word problems that dealt with these exact things that people run away from. And people say, "I'm never going to use this. I don't need this." I'm like, all right, okay. Like I'm here in Philly, and I see businesses will open up and then they close. Open up, they got all on Instagram.
Yep.
Then people doing reels, people coming in buying their food, and then next thing you know, a few months late, 6 months later, they close down. And I always wonder, what happened, but I have an idea that sometimes it has a lot to do with not being able to utilize math as a tool to do forecasting and to properly plan and make sound decisions so that you can be able to make some profit,
Hmm.
pay all your bills, keep the lights on, and continue to do that, continue to run that business. I think it's the math, and it's really, it's really a sad thing, and that's back to Bob Moses. That's why he said math education is the. I agree with him when I read that in Radical Equation.
Hmm.
Mathematics education is the civil rights issue of the 21st century.
Mm.
I agree with him when he said that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because
'Cause
when you think about, even with SNCC and, getting people registered to vote, when you do the math and you see that a county is 80% black, then it makes sense that you should be carrying a black candidate.
right,
And how does that, how do those numbers play out and all that?
it's so obvious, but see what happens is like if you don't understand percentages, well, if you
Hmm.
understand fractions, you can't really understand percentages, and if you don't understand how to calculate percentages, that idea right there, that piece of information you just shared right there, with that information, it just makes perfect sense. Oh yeah, we need to run this. Like why is it like we should be running this? It's 80% of us, 20% of them. So why are they running this? You know? If you don't even do the math, then somebody might convince you that no, this is how it's supposed to be, you know. And in a lot of colonial situations, well, globally, like Francis Cress Wilson, talked about that. Like Europeans are in the minority,
Right.
but they run the world, but they're in a minority. So the world is upside down and crazy. But a lot of it is some of it is mathematical, not understanding our actual position in terms of numbers. But then some of it is just this belief that we're supposed to be under their control. A lot of us think that because a lot of us we have like internalized anti-blackness, and we think that We believe in our own the own negative propaganda about ourselves. We think that, well, yeah, I'll never be as good as the white man. His water is wetter, his ice is colder. I'll never be as good as him. So he might as well just be in charge.
Mhm.
So a
Mhm.
lot of us buy into that. Um, and then some of us, again, back to the individual gains and individualism. Some of us are given positions where our job is actually to help them maintain their power over the group. So they'll
Mhm.
be like, and back to Amos Wilson, they'll be the black face of white power.
Right.
They're like the broker. They're like the middleman. So you got a lot of that going on, and you know, but a lot of our people that don't necessarily want to do that, um, they don't see it. They don't see anything wrong with it. Because another thing about mathematics is math helps you to identify the problem in the first place.
Which is perfect for the next topic, Histematics.
Hmm.
So I want you to talk about Histematics, and I want you to talk about the summer program you have and give out some information about that, because y'all, the Histematics program is really phenomenal. You know, you did a couple of lessons for us,
Hmm.
one with George Washington Carver and one with Medgar Evers. And so you have really trained my brain to start incorporating, some math in what it is that we do. So we have some people that we're working with. The scholars have to do a report. I want, their date of birth, and if they're transition, when they transition, how old were they,
Hmm.
or if they're still living, how old are they now? Just different things of that nature, trying to incorporate a little math into these lessons that we're learning. So talk about Histematics and why it's so important, because I feel like it's important because it kind of addresses some of the things you just talked about, inferiority and all that.
Yeah, well, Histematics, like simply put, is the use of history, specifically Black history or African history, to teach mathematics, and also using mathematics to teach Black history or African history. The reason for it, man, it was just really kind of just organically like my teaching style. In the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
I always want to, talk to my children about, different, Black figures and examples and exemplars, because my feeling is that if they have different role models, they might move different or they might act differently. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times I think the way our children behave is because of the examples that they have. So if their only example is the commercial rapper, the hand picked, hand selected commercial rapper that's going to promote a certain type of behavior and lifestyle, whether they be male or female, then it makes sense for the children to follow that type of behavior. But if you give them, like, okay, so if I give you, if you're a young girl and all you see is sexy red,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes sense you might want to act like sexy red, right? Whether that's how
Mm-hmm.
she really is or whether that's just her character, right? If you expose to sexy red and Asada Shakur and Ida B. Wells, and you know about, okay, well, black women also move like this, right? Then you might say, well, okay, well, yeah, so then the sexy red caricature is not as appealing, because I got some other options. But if you don't even know about what Sada Shakur was, you never exposed to that type of black woman. You never exposed to a Ida B. Wells. You never exposed to a Mary McLeod Bethune, or sisters that was in the Black Panther Party for self defense, or sisters that was helping out with revolutions in Haiti like Cecile Fatiman, or all these different types of people. Then you know doing what the white power structure gives you actually makes sense. So that's why I think it's our responsibility and it's my responsibility to help, provide some alternatives. So I figure, we can use math as an entry point to really talk about history, you know, um, and use history as an entry point to talk about math. And you mentioned George Washington Carver, and I want to talk about briefly mention like how Carver influenced me to do some of the work that I do in the community, because when I was studying him, because my son went to a middle school. His middle school and high school was named after George Washington Carver up here in North Philly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to, learn more about him, since my son is going to a school named after him. And now Asada's about to go to that school next year, by the way. So got a book, got a little biography on George Washington Carver while he was teaching. He was a science professor at Tuskegee, in botany and whatnot. Um, Him and Booker T. Washington worked it out to try to offer the education to people in the community in the rural areas. couldn't afford to take classes and be enrolled in Tuskegee as college students. So we had like a horse and buggy, of course, back,
Mhm.
before cars were invented, I believe. But
Mhm.
he had a horse and buggy, and he would go out into the rural areas with basically a traveling science lab, you know,
Right.
on the buggy, and he was teaching science. I'm like, man, like that's a dope idea. So, and now, like, so I'm like, I could do the same thing with math, which is part of the impetus for the YouTube channel, because like everybody can't afford the math tutoring,
Right.
but everybody, but I still want people to get access to it. So I create the YouTube channel so you can have access to pre-recorded content. Pause it, rewind it, watch it whenever you need to. But yeah, but Histematics is really about. It's also, speaking of Kwame Ture, another SNCC member who did a lot of work in Mississippi
Mississippi. Mhm.
in the '60s. One of the things he said was it resonated with me was that every Negro is a potential black man, right? So the Negro is a potential black man. I think he meant black man or woman. Every Negro
Yeah.
is a potential black man, potential black woman, meaning that a lot of our people get weaponized against us, but they're brilliant people. They're brilliant. A lot of them, and a lot of them, maybe nuclear physicists or computer scientists or architects or computer engineers or industrial engineers or electrical engineers or doctors or registered nurses. These people are brilliant people. They're not stupid, but they have a certain political and cultural orientation because in part, I think, because they've never been exposed to people of a more radical undertaking, a more radical nature, a more radical background. Like they may not have ever heard of a Thomas Sankara, or they never heard of a Milcar Cabral, you know, never heard of I don't know, Robert F. Williams. Never heard of these types of people. Never heard of H. Rat Brown, who I mentioned, several times, during this talk. Never heard of those people. So if you never even heard of those people, but yet at a young age you're studying algebra two, geometry, pre-calculus, then there's a certain politics. If you never heard of those people, then there's a strong chance you've only heard of black folks that were very much in line and you know in agreement with the maintenance of the status quo. The assimilationists, the safe Negroes. That's one thing I never, I'm sure you feel the same way. You never want to be seen as a safe Negro.
Nope.
I never nobody felt like I'm safe. I
I
want,
don't want to be celebrated by them. I want to be
yeah,
celebrated by us. Yes.
yeah. I want to be blacklisted by them. I don't want them to feel
Right.
comfortable, like like, oh, you gonna let him talk? Like
Right.
that's like that, like and again, like Kwame Ture, like again, this reminds me of something I want to say real quick. So like somebody like Kwame Ture or Malcolm X, and again, in contrast to the commercial rappers, right? So
Mhm.
commercial rappers, they brag about going to these exotic places and going to Europe and whatnot, like Jay-Z and Kanye West talking about niggas in Paris. And
Mhm.
so okay, that's cool, but then I think about this. I think about how Malcolm, near the end of his life, he was banned from France. The French government would not let him in because he was that powerful, because his words, they feared how he was going to influence people in France. Kwame Ture was not allowed in Trinidad.
Mhm.
Had a colonial regime. He was not allowed there. He couldn't come in there. Right. That's his own island where he was born. Right.
Mhm.
So again, if we reorient ourselves, it's like, okay, so now they're giving us these commercial rappers and these commercial caricatures and these so-called examples of black manhood. It's like they'll let you come in because they know what you're gonna do. You're not a threat. You're
Right.
you're very safe. Like Jay-Z is safe. Kanye West is safe. All these other rappers are very safe, right?
Like Kyrie not making the Olympic team. So you know why, right? We all know why Kyrie didn't
He's
make
not
it.
safe. He's not
Right. Right.
safe.
Right.
He's not safe. So Malcolm was not safe. He was a threat. Kwame Ture was not safe. He was a threat, right? These are the conversations we got to have with our children when
Yeah.
because our children, they're gonna choose their heroes. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna choose their heroes regardless. So it's like, yeah, that's your man and everything. He might be talented, but you might need to compartmentalize and say, yeah, I like his music, but his politics, they're kind of weak. He's got weak politics. I can listen to his music, but he's got weak politics. But again, they gotta see those. So Histematics, welcomes in those conversations, in a math space,
Mhm.
right? Because it exposes the contradiction, and then from there, then we start talking about solving equations. Because when you solve an equation, if your answer is wrong, the left side of the equation does not equal to the right side of the equation. That's when you have the contradiction. So then the contradiction, based on what we're talking about now, might be, well, how is it that these men are celebrated and seen as these standards and these great examples of black manhood, but yet these Europeans don't have no problem with them coming into their country. But these men, they couldn't come in. They knew they was a threat. They knew that, they might say some words, just words alone. It might cause people to burn all this shit down.
Right. Right.
These people are not going to do that because they're basically puppets. They're there to just recite songs on a stage, have people distracted and counter revolutionary. And let me be very clear, like I'm a rap fan,
Mhm.
but I try to put things in its proper place. I understand what it is, right? But some of us are not able to
No.
like do both. Some of
Right.
us not. Some of us like we become so enthralled by the music, and it's like it's a great form of escapism, for us, and then it keeps us counter revolutionary, and that's what it's supposed to do. That's what it's meant to do, because it's like they gotta give us examples. The power structure has to give us give our children examples that will cause them to want to remain politically impotent, never go against the status quo, just and chase money,
Yeah.
chase money. And the problem with that is it becomes complicated for some people because when you speak out against that, somebody that's not a critical thinker and they're very surface level will get upset with you and they say, "Oh, but you think people are supposed to be poor?" Like, no, I never said that. You're making
Right.
a poor man argument now. I never said that. You do need to provide for food, clothing, and shelter, but at least you need to understand what the ultimate goal really should be, right? It should
Right.
be about power, and our people being able to survive and
And
thrive.
not compromising your morals
Yeah, yeah.
in the
But
collective.
but Histematics is all about having the conversation we just had, but in a math space.
Right.
And if anybody here is in Baltimore, or in the Baltimore area, I'm teaching a Histematics summer program for 5 weeks in July, from July to the beginning of August, where we're going to cover different books. We're gonna talk about I'm going to use these books, and this is kind of like an idea that I had for a while, so it's finally coming to fruition. Where one day I came to the realization that because here's the thing, like when I read books, right, um, I I see math problems
Hmm.
when I'm reading the text, right? I see all types of math problems. If there's a number, if there's a date, if there's a some type of fraction or proportion or whatever, and also if I see mathematical terminology in the book, then I start thinking of math problems, right?
Remind me to tell you about a book I read. You may have read it already.
I'm gonna do
I
that.
read the book and I said, "Oh, Akil would love this because I'm gonna tell you now before I forget." Binti, I think that's the name of it. Binti. It's a novella, so it's a really short book, and I'm about to read the second one. It's an African author, and it's in that category, African futurism. So
Okay,
her thing was math, and they had these pod things that they flew on, so they had to have the math and all these things to know how they were gonna fly, when they were gonna, all that. I said, "Oh, I bet Akil would love this book.
I
It's a
may
novel."
I may have to check that out. I may have
Hmm.
to check that out. But what we doing is, so we dealing with the autobiography of Malcolm X,
Okay.
Asada, the miseducation of the Negro. Speaking of Kwame Ture, Black Power,
Yeah.
and a book called Martial Law. Martial Law is the biography of Marshall Eddie Conway, who was a Black Panther Party member from Baltimore,
Okay.
who was a political prisoner for many years and was released some years ago. But I think he made transition either last year or the year before that. So, since he's a native son of Baltimore and I'm gonna be in Baltimore, um, which is where I was raised too,
Hmm.
incidentally, I figured I wanted to, pay homage to that brother. So I'm using those books as math textbooks.
Okay.
So that's essentially what we're doing. So I'm reading through and I'm like, we're creating math word problems based on those books. So based on some excerpts from those books, because it's a way to make the math more meaningful,
Hmm.
and it's also a way to connect a story to the math, so it's not just so abstract like a bunch of equations and whatnot. And it also provides an opportunity for the young people to not only learn the history but also learn the math at the same time. You know, so that's something I'm really looking forward to. Really looking forward to doing that, and I plan to do even more, around the country, other places, whether in person or virtually, or maybe like do some on Saturdays. um yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like an outgrowth of like the presentations I did for the Ashe Academy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, on the one on George Washington Carver, and then the one on Mega Evers, like you mentioned. Kind of like an outgrowth for that, but something like even more expansive, because we meeting every day for 5 weeks. You know.
Okay, because you gave me an idea because I was watching you the other night when you said that, and I'm getting ready to do our summer reading challenge, and so I think I'm going to try to incorporate, and I'll call you or text you or something to see if we can incorporate some of those same lessons into some of the books that we can have on our list. Like, they can get bonus points if they do this lesson, but it's going to pertain to Histematics and things of that nature. So yeah, so that's awesome because I think a lot of times with these books you listed, once they start reading these books and they look at the math problems and they start thinking about some of the concepts. Like, I just remember some of the things you had with the Mega Evers lesson.
Mhm.
If they walk 12 miles to school every day, him and his brother Charles, how many miles did they walk,
Right.
and things of that nature? It's something that we don't even think about. Like, even with gas, I remember my dad used to always try to see how far he'd go on a tank of gas, and I didn't realize he was doing math then. So
Yeah,
he
yeah.
tried to determine that. So yeah.
Yeah, so like even the questions about like Mega Evers and his brother like walking to school, like I think again, math as a tool. And this is why we gotta stop running away from math. We gotta run towards it, because the math helps us to better understand the history. Because it's one thing, like you read a passage or read a book about somebody, and um you might read the numbers but not really understand, like, what does that really mean, like what concretely, like how does that, like what does that relate to, or how does that compare to this, or how does that compare to my experience. But the math helps you to see, like, wow, like that's really far, or like, well, that's not that far, or this is further than this, or it would take just as long to do what he did to do this other thing, right? But the math helps you to see all of that, and it helps you to get a better understanding of the text, actually.
Hmm.
So it's like, we gotta start like using math as a way to better understand our surroundings, better understand the books that we're exposed to, the situations that we find ourselves in. And this is part of why, like, my book, How to Use All This Math Volume 1, it came about because I was so immersed in math, and like tutoring every day, teaching every day. um I decided, and I was thinking a lot about, the complaints that parents have, and also seeing the deficiencies a lot of children have. And I realized that children just don't, they're behind when they go into school, like the first from the beginning. So what if there was a way that, like, when they're in the house, or in the car with their parents, they could just be practicing math in a relaxed environment and in a relaxed way. So that, therefore, so when they go to school, they'll already have such a solid foundation, right? Because I was sitting in my mom's house, just looking around, just thinking of math problems, like looking at the patterns on the wall, or she had this big analog clock, and I was like, and then it was an analog clock, so there's a lot of math and telling time with an analog clock, and then the analog clock had Roman numerals on it, so then there's math and Roman numerals, because you got to do math to be able to interpret and comprehend what the Roman numeral means. Like, you got to do that, like, you know. Um, so it's just
And
so much math all around us.
yeah, because Kizzy had a hard time with math, elapsed time, and things of that nature.
Hmm.
So I remember we do have a book, Benjamin Banneker, and Telling Time. So going back, that's a Histematic lesson too,
Hmm.
right there. It's like, okay, so this is Benjamin Banneker, and this is what he did, and this is how we can create a clock. So, just doing a lesson with her creating an analog clock and
Right.
counting out everything, helped her figure it out.
And the beauty of all this too is like, we don't, and I want everybody to hear this, like hear me and hear me good. Like, we don't need permission from no white folks to do none of this. Like, we don't. We really shouldn't need. We don't need permission from them to do anything, but
Right.
definitely not this. Like, we don't need to feel like, uncomfortable, or like, are they gonna let me teach my children this or whatever? Like, no, just do it. Just do it. Like, well,
Do it.
they don't even have to be part of the conversation. We're not talking to them. It's like we're
Right.
not talking to them. Like, and this is also why where Histematics comes into play too, because one of the ways that, and a lot of people try to play games, they try to play in our face all the time. They'll say things like, math is apolitical. There's no racism in math. Math is just math. Like, no, that's not true. And the moment that you give me a textbook and every formula in that textbook is named after some white man, that's a political move.
Yes.
That's political. That is intentional. That is political. You're trying to assert yourself as intellectually dominant and saying that Europeans are intellectually dominant, because if mathematics is a discipline and a respected discipline that is very useful and very required, and then you say, okay, well, we're going to highlight these men, these that happen to be European, as the progenitors or the major exponents of this subject and this discipline, then what you've essentially said, what any person with basic common sense would deduce, is that, oh, this must be from them, right? That's a political decision. You're trying to take ownership of mathematics, and it's a lie. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's 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 fraudulent,
Right.
right? So, but one of the things they do. So, with speaking of that, is like, we're not talking to them. Whenever we use the Pythagorean theorem, it's like we're evoking an ancestor, right? But Pythagoras ain't my ancestor though. I don't want to talk to him.
Right.
He's a Greek. He's a Greek. He can stay in Greece. I got plenty of my own ancestors. I got ancestors in ancient Kemet that he studied under.
Right.
I want to evoke them.
Right.
I like to evoke them, like Theophilo Banga, who worked under Sheikh Anta Diop. He wrote a book years ago, addressing these things, and documenting the fact that Pythagoras studied in ancient Kemet for 22 years under some African brothers. I think the brother's name, one of the people's names was Eunipsis, but Eunipsis is the Greek name, so I want to find like his actually Kemetic name, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, so I'd rather, I don't want to talk to him. It's like, because when
Right.
when we do work, right, and like when we do mathematics and we have to use certain formulas, and certain formulas are named for certain people, what you're actually doing to a certain degree is you're evoking an ancestor, and you're having a conversation with that ancestor. So
Mm.
the thing is, if I don't want to have a conversation with Pythagoras. I don't want to talk to none of the Europeans who most of the formulas are named after in most of the textbooks. I want to talk to my own ancestors. So what Histematics does too is it enables us, well, it gives us um a feasible, and well, basically a feasible way for us to practice self-determination, or kuji chakalia.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can name formulas whatever we want. That's what they did. They name
Right.
stuff whatever they want to. Like,
Right.
and again, it's like we don't need permission from them or from nobody to name something. What we want to name it. We don't need permission. They didn't need permission.
Right.
So why we need permission?
Yeah.
We're the first humans.
And I'm a firm right, and I'm a firm believer of always invoking our culture in lessons. When Kizzy has a project to do, we doing something cultural, and it's nothing wrong with that, people. It's nothing wrong with our story, learning our story. Don't let them tell you that, because you have to have history, quote history, in every step of education that you take. You have to have it in high school. I know you have to have it in college. You had to
Mhm.
have so many hours of history. So
Yeah,
stop letting them tell, and stop saying that our story is not important, because history is important, and our
yeah,
story is very important. As you will learn with Histematics and whatever we do,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, man, like that stuff, that's not good for our mental health, man. Like all that,
No.
like living, like trying to like prove ourselves to white folks. and prove that we good enough, and like even trying to like prove our humanity to them.
Right.
Nah, we don't got time for that. Like
Not,
y'all, we got to stop doing that. Well, not us, but like
yeah.
those of us that are doing that, y'all got to stop doing that. That's not good for your health.
Right.
Because like you got
And stop worrying about what they do. We got our own culture to celebrate. We have our own things that we need to uplift and make known. I don't care. They supposed to do what they do.
yeah.
Well, we supposed to do what we're supposed to do. We have forgotten that we have a whole culture that we can celebrate. That
It's
they
very
took
freeing.
from.
It's very freeing when you get to that point because you just like I sometimes I feel like I have to remind myself that I've been kind of I guess immersed in a more like I've been more nationalist leaning
Mm-hmm.
for such a long time now, right? So even when something happens like in the media and it's like, oh, this person's being racist and they're doing this and that, and it's like I'm just unbothered by it. I'm like, I expect you to do that. Like if you didn't do that, I'd be a little more concerned. But it's I see black people around me so up in arms, and I'm like, bro, why you so worried about what they think about you?
Why you so worried about Confederate History Month? Well, we got X Day coming up next month on the 19th. Brandy called me today. I said, yeah, okay. So, we got our own days as well. They're supposed to do that. I mean,
I
seriously.
like it. I want to learn more about them. Like, because I
Hmm.
know they're not gonna tell the truth. They're not gonna tell the truth. They're not gonna tell the truth.
And, and, and
It's
the
funny
beauty
to me.
and the beauty of knowing our story is that everything they're doing is just remixed and recreated and
Yeah.
repackaged and thrown back out there to us again. So yeah.
What they do is they troll us. They troll us to see if we're gonna react. They're like little kids, like when we was in elementary school. Somebody like try to instigate and bother us to try to get a reaction. That's what they do. And so many of us, because we do we do see them as the standard for
Right,
humanity, which we shouldn't. If we
right,
know history, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't look at them that way. So we want to prove to them that we're worthy, right? So all they got to do is like, oh, watch this, watch me do this, watch me say this, watch me, do this. I'm gonna leak this story. I'm gonna say this about this person, or like leak this video or doing this. And I'm like, okay, I know what y'all doing. Like, and another thing is like, and like Toni Morrison, made a quote about this. It's like, is that type of racism is meant to just distract you from your work. Like, we got a lot of work to do.
too much.
We got too much work to do. Like, I don't even like. I mean, yeah, I might take some time to because Jacob Carruthers in his book Intellectual Warfare, he talks about the intellectual civil war, right? Um, among black folks, I might take sometime, argue with some Negroes,
Yeah,
you know, not a lot of time because
right.
I got work to do, but I don't have time to argue with white folks. I don't got
Why?
time.
You
I don't
know
got time.
what? I had a whole post at 1 year. I'm like, why would you waste your
I don't got
energy
time.
talking to people who benefit and know they have a privilege? They know it. They know it. So why would you waste your energy having those conversations?
They
You
got so much to say. They got and
saying,
listen, they get if you probably had this experience, they get so mad when you won't engage them, when you won't argue with them. They get so angry. They be livid. They be even more mad, like because you won't. Because like no, because here's the thing, like it's about decentering them, right?
yeah,
Because if we're African centered, we gotta center ourselves, right? Just like that's why in math, like we do math so we can center ourselves and center our children so they can learn math so that we can solve our problems. Because
right,
our problems are at the center, right? Because this is it's like geometry, right? You got the center of the circle, then you got the edge of the circle, right? They are tangential. They are tangential. They should not be in the center, right?
right,
They should not be in our center. In our circle, we are at the center, right? They're tangential, like they're on the outside, right? They're relevant only to the extent that we live in the same society as them. They may, have some influence on some things that affect our lives. Cool, but they should not be at the center, right? Um, Dang, I lost my train of thought. Oh no, but this is what I was gonna say. Even if you're attacking them, a lot of times you're still centering them, and that's why they like that. So the thing we got to think about is like, are you centering them? Because because a lot of people feel like a lot of black folks feel like, look, nah, because they not about to say this about us, and they not about to do this about that. Like, and I'm like, bro, you still centering them. even if you calling them everything but a child of God, and even if you saying this and that, and you trying to prove to them that black people did this first and black people did that first, you still centering them because they shouldn't be that relevant. They really shouldn't, right? So some black people honor them and put and pedestalize them, so they center them in a positive way, right? Because they pay homage to, they want to be honorary Europeans. What do they call them? Negro Saxons, Negropeans, right? They do that. But then
Yeah.
even the people that, even sometimes the people that spend a lot of energy, and sometimes you got to, I mean, for each other, for our own benefit, we have to proclaim, yeah, they're this and they're that. But that's for us though. That's not
Right.
really. I don't need to tell you about yourself. Like I don't need
Right.
to do that. You
Right.
should know who you are. But for our children may need to know, and we may need to tell each other, remind each other, like, okay, this was actually a problem that was started by them because this is what they do and this is how they move. So that way
Hmm.
we won't misdiagnose a problem that is taking place in our community. We
Right.
may need to do that. But even the ones that like go so hard and want to spend so much energy, like just, attacking
Hmm.
white folks this and white folks this, white men, you're still centering them. As long as you're still centering them, they're still winning. They still winning. And that's why they like it. That's
Yeah.
why they like it. Because they know, listen, as long as I'm the center of attention, as long as y'all like it's almost like as long as you're talking about me, it's cool. Whether you
Exactly.
celebrating me,
Hmm.
telling me how great I am, or you telling me how bad I am, I'm still living
In
rent
that
free in your
attention.
head, and
Hmm.
I'm at the center of your existence. So you're still engaging in Eurocentrism, so that's Histematics because that's a geometry lesson because we're talking about a circle, right? So from there, that's the entry point to the geometry lesson. So then we start talking about how to find the area of the circle using pi r squared, how to find the circumference of the circle using 2 pi r, how to find the different the length of the sector of the circle,
Hmm.
the different lengths of the chords that go through the circle, all of that. Or even, I'll give you another example from Histematics. Malcolm has a speech where he talks about the economic cycle in the black community. So you born into a poor black community, and then because you were born into a poor black community, you attend a low performing public school in the poor black community,
Right.
and then you get a low quality education in that low performing school, and then you grow up, you age out of that school, you graduate out of that school, and then you don't. So it's like the cycle. Then you go from you're born here, go to the school, and then you graduate out of the school, and then because you gained a low quality education, now you still have to live in the same community, and you're
Hmm.
stuck. So it's a circle, and it keeps going around and around and around. So we can talk about, so from there, that's the entry point, right? We're talking about the black history, or the political analysis of Omawale, Malcolm X, and then from there, then we could talk about the geometry of a circle. We could, even deal with the unit circle and trigonometry. You know what I'm saying? Like, dealing with dealing with radians and going past 2 pi and then going to 4 pi. And we could do that. We got a lot of different options. But it's a way for us to like destigmatize mathematics and connect it to history. So yeah, I put the application link into the chat. I tried to. I don't think it didn't let me
Mm-mm. I
post
don't
it.
see it.
Yeah, it didn't let me post it. I put it in the private chat. Maybe it'll go through it, and then you can copy it.
Okay.
Someone put it in there. But yeah, anybody in Baltimore that's watching this, please, like, fill out the application. We're still accepting applications until early May. And yeah, it should be good. It should be good. This is my life's work, and I take I take it very seriously.
You know what? I was talking about you today. I said, yeah, because somebody was like, Akil, when he speak, he always talk. I said, whenever he do anything, because I was looking at that post you made. You went to some type of, you were a vendor somewhere. I
Down
was like,
in Morgan State in
yeah,
Baltimore, I had Kwame with me.
mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm like, shoot, he is deliberate, it's intentional, it's consistent, it's all that.
Yeah,
And that is actually commendable because a lot of us, look, I'm saying us, we have a square, and sometimes we step off of it for a little bit. So you are always have always been an example to me as far as that goes. And yeah, so y'all have to stay tuned because Brother Akil is always on the move and on the go. And I know he's gonna probably be at the summit this year in Jackson, bringing that knowledge to us, because I'm telling y'all, last year was so powerful. It's still rippling. That those gems you drops are still rippling in the water. So yeah, and again, y'all need to check out his YouTube channel. Again, I'm gonna be trying to use some of the Histematics. Grab a copy of that book, How to Use All This Math, Volume One. I was gonna say yesterday, me and Kids was watching the game. We was watching Philly and the Knicks, and she was doing the math, like
Yes,
how
yes,
many points do they have to get the lead, or things of that nature. So it's those little things, and it actually creates some type of bond when you doing those things with your children. You watching TV and you finding math problems in what you're doing. She'll remember that.
yeah, yeah. That's how we win. That's how we win because if we're doing math whenever possible, then when they go into the classroom, they're gonna have the foundation. And if they have the foundation, then they can build on the foundation. Far too often, our children go into math classes with no foundation, with zero foundation. And that's just like, what happens if you're a contractor, you try to build a house with no foundation? Like it's going to cave in. Like, and that's what happens to our children. So you got to found it. And so when people will say it's got to start in the home, people say that, but a lot of times people are just trying to provide destructive criticism toward black people because
Yeah,
they have a hatred for black people. A lot of black, especially when other black people say it, it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. But they'll say that, but then they won't offer any. And this is how you can kind of tell, like they don't say it in a loving way. It's not a loving critique. It's a mean spirited critique. It's a mean spirited critique, and they're also not offering any solutions, any resources to try to help somebody. To be able to offer that, to be able to help things, to be able to facilitate things starting in the home. So that's why I got the YouTube channel. That's
yeah.
why I wrote the book. That's why Volume 2 is coming out with more examples. The end of the summer. That's the plan. Um, and then there's going to be a volume 3 also. There's going to be a volume 3 as well. But we got to provide resources to our people. You know, so in the same type of math preparation that my children have. Having a father that's a math teacher and a math professor, I want our whole community to have that.
I feel that way about reading. And because you and I have had conversations about reading and math going hand in hand, which is because those math tests they're all tests, they're all reading problems.
All reading
So
problems.
many reading problems. Kids brings home this homework sheet, where they have Monday, Tuesday, they have them in columns, the
Uh huh.
homework. So she's supposed to do these columns. And sometimes it's like, okay, we might need to call Brother Akil or send him a picture of the problem or things of that
Yeah.
nature. But I do appreciate you, because I tell people all the time, all you have to do is send him a picture and he'll direct you to the video on
Hmm.
the YouTube channel, which is great, because you have really given us the confidence to do this math. And Kinsey thinks that you are like the math person. If you say it, it's like the gospel. So I appreciate I appreciate you for all that. So yeah, we definitely appreciate you. Looking forward to building with you some more. I'm thankful that our paths cross.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too.
Mhm.
I got a lot of love for y'all. Down in Coldwater, in the Mississippi.
Yeah,
I've learned a lot. I've benefited a lot. In the past like 3 4 years since I've been coming down there, and I always look forward to coming down. Always.
always.
It's always a vibe. It's always a good time. Learn some things, get to share some information, take some information back. And just being around good black folks.
Yeah, yeah.
Good black folks, and people that's we got similar goals. you know
Hmm.
so it's important to be around people with similar goals, because there's, as this work, it gets lonely sometimes, and then it's good to get, like, that reinforcement, to get reminded that the work is not in vain. It
Hmm.
is important, and there are even other people that are doing it too.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. for sure.
All love.
All love. All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. I do want to share one more thing. Next month is mental health awareness month, and I did create I don't want to say a challenge, but some tips that we can practice to check in. You know, these are not just for the month of May. These are some things that we can kind of incorporate into our lifestyle, because all the mentally, physically, emotional health care, they're all intertwined. So we can think about, some meatless Mondays, meditation,
Mm.
taking a break from social media, pay it forward, slow down Sundays, things of that nature. And then I also have some resources as well that I'm going to be sharing. So I'm excited about that. Some books that we could be reading, not just like mental health books, but some to get us back to our African selves, our culture. I'm gonna be reading "Let the Circle Be Unbroken" by
Okay.
Mama Marimba this week. So I'm gonna be probably sharing excerpts from that book. I'm excited about it. I got a copy, and so also we might want to look at some Joy DeGruy and some uh what was that other book? To Be African, that book of essays about how to be an African mother, father, teacher, educator, things of that nature. So, uh, as the author said in the Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health, the further we move away from our culture, the more mental health issues are going to pop up. So
Hmm.
our culture is what binds us, and we got to get back to it.
Hmm.
So anyway, Brother Akil, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank everybody who tuned in, and just be looking for the work, looking for the solutions, practical solutions. We have them. All right.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right. All right. Y'all, peace out. Till next time.
Peace.